All right, this is a webinar regarding bioengineering and specifically neurobiology. And the title of it is Robots to Cyborgs. We're going to talk advancements in biology, cyborgs, and then neurobiology. Special thanks to Dr. Ian Browner. He helped with this presentation. All right. We're going to begin by talking about Moore's Law. And just refresh for everybody who doesn't remember Moore's Law, but the basic idea is computing power doubles every 2 years. And some people say 18 months to 2 years. And one way of measuring computer power is transistors, the number of on and off switches on a computer. And if you look at this, you start to see in 1971, the average computer chip central processor had 2,300 resistors. By 2011, there's 2.6 billion. It's been this incredible growth in computing power, which has contributed to growth in other technologies. Another way to look at it is 4004 again this was the computing power. Here's another visual way of looking at how more powerful that's getting. So there's tremendous doubling of every year. And what's really wild too about Moore's Law is the fact that this rate of change would be, you'd really see the significance of it later in time. And in a Mother Jones article, they talk about this. We'll go ahead and get rid of this. Bear with me one second. And the point of this would be that if you started computing power and you said it was equivalent of filling up Lake Michigan, that in 1940 you put 1 drop of water and then every 2 years you would double the drops. Then, by 1950 you added a gallon of water. And you'd say, well, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. 1970, nothing. But then, as you might have a slight sheen on the lake even by the year 2000. 2010, you only have a few inches of water on the bottom of the lake. But and you might even stop that. You've been 2010, you start in 1950, you're going, my gosh, or 1940, excuse me, we've never gotten anywhere. 70 years, this is just a stupid task. But if you just hang on, by 2020, you'd have 40 feet of water across the entire Lake Michigan. And by 2025, the lake would be filled up. It's funny how after 70 years, you've got practically nothing. 15 years, the job's finished. So it's that exponential growth. And we may be experiencing that now in computing power. All right? And as we talk about computer power, we're going to talk about how this applies to biology now. Okay? This rate of change is increasing. It's driven by information technology, computer information. All right? Has helped advance other technologies. And one of them is in genetics. We're going to get much more into synthetic biology, but today we're going to just demonstrate that. Moore's Law, it ended up in the beginning that it took us nearly 13 years and $1 billion to sequence the human genome. And that basically is try to figure out on our DNA where, and that's in every human being chromosomes, where the different genes are. Those parts of the DNA that gives our body features, properties, i.e. your brown eyes. And we'll get into more detail down the road on this in future webinars, but simply to say, now that very same thing that took 13 years to do, it's 14 years later, and we can do a person in 2 days. And while the first time it cost $1 billion, we're now getting it down to $2,000. $2,000 sequencing. The goal is to get it under $1,000. We're well on their way. Been a massive. And in fact, if you look at this red line, in the beginning it was following Moore's Law, going down. Now it just took off and crushed Moore's Law. It's much faster. All right. And here's a video. DNA sequencing outpaces Moore's Law by Eric Green. If you'll search that in Google and watch it, you'll see he talks about this and the tremendous changes it means. I'll give you a second if you want to stop and watch that video. Just do a Google search, Eric Green, DNA sequence outpacing Moore's Law. I'll put all these links, will be on the Edmodo. All right. In nanotechnology, it's the science of the very small. And so what we do here, for example, this young man used and you can Google him, John Andraka, used nanotechnology to detect cancer. And what he did is he found out carbon nanotubules have different electrical properties if you change their shape. And he basically got the nanotubules to bind to the cancer, or cancer markers, I should say, and causing them to give a different polarity. Well, what that did is you now have a great way to test to see if you have a certain form of cancer. And he had amazing results with this. So, and that was using nanotubes, technology you couldn't even done 10 years ago. Okay? So this continues to grow. You're seeing more. Nanotechnology is getting out there. I don't think it's always obvious what something is nanotechnology. And unfortunately, there's a lot of marketing claiming it's nanotechnology. And obviously, the next thing is robotics. Is huge advancements in robotics now. They're everywhere. When you go to buy gas, you're using a robot. Many of us in robotic competitions. They're just everywhere. So cyborg is a combination of living and artificial. This is the following cyborg slides are based on a college student named Sankar did this, so we're using them. Cyborg versus a robot. A cyborg, I think you just need is a combination of living and machine. A robot is all machine. And there's a real question of, are we evolving into more cyborgs ourselves? We're adding more mechanical things to us. And if we could, do we really want to? So, a cybernetic, let me see here why I'm not, let's go back in here. This is annoying. Give me 1 second, folks. It's short for cybernetic organism. A cyborg is a combination between man and machine, different from a robot. A robot is all machine, used to overcome physical and mental constraints. It's been popular since World War II. Manfred Clynes and Nathan Klein came up with the word cyborg. And then, you start to have this human-computer interaction. How can we interface robotics into us? Google Glass is an attempt at this. How do we go about doing that? Ken Warwick is a professor at the cybernetics at the University of Reading. He's the world's leading expert in cybernetics. He fired an array of 100 electrodes himself to his nervous system in order to link with the internet to control a robotic hand, a loudspeaker, an amplifier. He's put that all into himself. So there he is. In a recent science fiction movie, Iron Man 3, Tony Stark injected himself electrodes in his hands for the sake of recognizing his iron suit. So he had that. So just like in the movies, we're doing that for real. If you remember, he hit a pistol into his hand, and then he'd call his suit and it'd come right to him, his iron suit. Another one is we're putting contact lenses not only get your vision back up to normal and enhances. In a Mission Impossible movie, they put on contact glasses that will help him use it to do facial recognition, so he can quick put it on looking for the person he's looking for that he would miss otherwise. Bionic arms, another great story. Beginning of this war, we basically, almost until World War II, we just had a hook. In Vietnam, we had this big, heavy, clunky thing that, again, a little bit of an improved hook. During the war, we have really worked to make these a lot better. We make them lighter and we make them stronger. One of the big pitches to doing this is, can you pick up a little grape with your robotic hand? Retinal plant, they're trying to replace retinal in the Boston Retinal Implant Project. That is going to include facial recognition software, so you can't forget a face. I could use that. But I think bionic limbs are where we really think cyborgs a lot. And so what I would throw out to you now is I would like you to watch these 3 videos because they're really quite amazing. You see a robotic hand catches a ball. It also uses learner. The Terminator hand is the most advanced robotic hand out there. It's really sharp. People using it can do all kinds of things. Lime is another group of combination. It uses more air on some of these. So you've got, there's Lime Robot, and then there's this other one that uses air to try to get the weight down. Very fluid, very fast. If you want, take a moment and go ahead and watch these videos. There's a foot. There's a cell phone implant, so you could have that in the back of your ear. And all I've done is taken a cell phone chip and stuck it in there. I think it would have to be a little bit more than that. Skin, Obviously legs, lungs, heart, 3D hip. Pneumatic muscles, there's some reasons to think pneumatic is going to be better. They're working on making livers. Artificial stomach, people are trying to get. Kidneys, go in this bag right next to you where your kidneys are. Okay, now we're going to talk just a little bit about the nervous system so you get appreciation of how difficult it is to make a cyborg. If you want, please watch this video. Again, I have a lot of videos on this, but they're useful, and go ahead and pull these off. Now, a nervous system receives sensory input, interprets it, and sends it out to appropriate commands. So think about it. We have the nervous input. So this is input, and you have output. Motors often the output. So you have sensory input, that's say your eyes, but you really do see with your brain. The eye brings it in, but your brain looks at it, and then it controls the motor output. So this is the peripheral nervous system right here, and there's brain and spinal cord. All right. And you don't always have to go, by the way, all the way up to the brain. You have reflexes in your legs. If I hit right underneath your muscle, right underneath your kneecap, your knee will jerk forward. There's a reflex, an automatic response there, and it doesn't have to bother to go to the brain. If you think about it, we're wired, our feet are wired to walk, whether or not our head's attached, because you need your body to balance immediately. You can't send a shot up to your brain and come back down if you can avoid it. It's much faster to handle the trajectory. So you have sensory receptors. I tap it with that little doctor taps you underneath, see your reflex. Then these inner neurons carry this message to your muscles, your flexor muscle, which causes you to go, oh yeah, kick out. All right. Sensor, spinal. Notice it never had to go all the way up to the brain. Neurons are specialized for carrying nervous systems. So we got to talk about this. At rest, the neuron's plasma membrane, that's the neuron cell, has a potential energy. Again, potential is always this difference. You know, we talked about this potential with voltage and electricity. We're going to talk about potential in flight down the road. So inside the neuron, potassium is high and sodium is low. Outside the neuron, the potassium is low and the sodium is high. This creates this potential. Positive on the outside, negative on the inside. So what happens, a nerve signal is generated. When a nerve signal generates, and we can start to see it down here, 1, your resting potential is 1 and 1. Here's your action potential when things start to happen. A nerve signal is called an action potential. When that happens, additional sodium channels open and the potassium channels are closed. So the sodium channels come in, the potassium can't get out. All right. A stimulus, here we go, right there. Open sodium channel, its threshold is reached, and action potential is triggered. So you got to get to this threshold. It might be a small stimulus, not enough to cause it to do something. But if you get beyond that threshold, and then what really starts to happen is the voltage gated, we'll kind of go back up and around this. You get to sodium channels close and are inactive. Potassium channels open up. So sodium stops, channels, and this is at 4. So 3, let me go back and restate this, okay? Resting statement, there's no channels going between the two. We stimulate some of these channels, the threshold is reached. Then 3, additional sodium comes rushing in. This gets very positive. See, the action potential goes up really high. And then after a little while, that channel closes, it starts to fall. It actually drops below the resting channel. So there's this brief overshoot, and then it goes back to what the resting is. So it's really a chemical reaction. You're establishing this potential. Okay? Action potentials are self-propagating, a one-way channel reaction along a neuron. It's an all or non event. Either it happens or it doesn't. The frequency of action potentials, but not their strength, changes with the strength of the stimulus. So it's not as if it's getting stronger. It's just the number of action potentials we get. All right. It's not that they're bigger action potentials. It is simply you get more of them depending on, the impulse. All right. You touch a burning hand, you're going to get an impulse that says, "Lift my hand immediately." So here's our plasma membrane. We We pour sodium in. This action potential moves down. Now, this is positive, negative, negative. Now this is positive, that's negative behind it. And it just keeps working its way down, see? Synapses are where signals are transmitted. It's kind of cool about this. You have your action potential arrives. Vesicles fuel with the plasma membrane. That's the outer part of the cell. And it releases a neurotransmitter goes through here. The neurotransmitter goes through these receptors, and ion channels open. Once they're through, this ion channel closes. That's the problem with addiction. We believe that you're messing with these connections here. That's why it's so very, very hard to quit. Some receive it. Some neurotransmitters excite a cell. Some inhibit the cell's activity. So, depending on what the cell's receiving, whether it's exhibitory or inhibitory or excitatory, depends on how the nerve cell is going to react. So it's funny how you both have excitatory and some you inhibit. We get in animal systems. If you go to the most basic animals, they have a neural net. I mean, really have what you would call a brain. Bilateral or symmetrical animals evolve. They start to get this cephalization, which is the formation of some kind of brain-like device. And centralization, where up here, everything's spread across this critter. Here, you start to get a brain right where it is. Okay? Central nervous system consists of your brain and spinal cord. So there's your brain connected to your spinal cord. The vertebrate peripheral nervous system, PNS, peripheral nervous system, consists of cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and ganglion. So this is all part of the peripherals, all these things going on here. This is central brain and spinal cord. This is peripheral everywhere else. You know, and here's the white. If you take the spine, I cut it in half, you got white and gray matter. It runs up and down your spine. You know, the motor nervous system carries signals to and from the skeletal muscle. The autonomic nervous system regulates the internal environment. So motor, think you're running with your legs. Autonomic is the part of your brain that causes you to be able to automatically breathe. You don't have to stay awake all night so you'll remember to breathe. You just do it. And there's things like that, but it's all part of the autonomic. And it can be parasympathetic underneath the motor. You got peripheral nervous system. It can be both motor and autonomic. Under autonomic, you have the parasympathetic and sympathetic. And enteric division, which includes muscles and glands of the digestive system. And, you know, in here, here's the parasympathetic, this is sympathetic. So parasympathetic constricts the eyes. This one dilates the eyes. This one inhibits saliva. This one causes the saliva in the parasympathetic. So they balance each other out. This one accelerates the heart. This one slows it because I'm eating. This one simulates an nephron. You know, hey, let's fight or flight. This one is more about eating and taking our time. All equally important. The structure of the human computer is the human brain. It's the most amazing thing still. It regulates homeostatic functions. In other words, we want to stay normal. We don't want to be too hot. We don't want to be too cold. It constantly does a feedback loop system. It's got to keep track of our body position so you know how to balance yourself. It's keeping track of all the sensory information. It's doing that all while we do other things. It's really quite amazing. The cerebrum is the part of the forebrain. It's the most large, complex part of the brain. This is where we have our cerebral hemispheres. This is the part of the brain that makes us us. So you got the frontal area right here, smells right here, and literally these are just these little parts of the brain where we're going to see all these things. Visual areas, I can poke that part of the brain. We've done this with people with accident victims, and you see you can just disturb one little part of the brain and it'll have an impact. And sometimes, very strange, you lose the ability to say S or something. And no matter what you do, you're not going to get back because you damage that part of your brain. So there's three main parts. The forebrain, think of that's you, really. That gives your personality, everything about you. Then you have the midbrain and hindbrain. The hindbrain is really the oldest part of our brain. And when you hear people say they're brain dead. It's a very controversial topic, and I'm not going to get terribly into it, but I just want you to realize what they're talking about is the front lobe's damaged, usually significantly. So the only thing left to go is your brain stem. Well, if that's the only thing running, you've lost your ability to have memory, and you've lost your ability to be you, to have your sense of humor, remember anything you've ever done, know your family, etc. If there's no signal there, for people will say, for all practical purposes, there's nothing on, it's not coming on. Some people would disagree. So, but I'm just kind of giving you a sense of what brain dead is. So, and again, like we said, the brain has very specific parts. They discovered these parts usually by accident. When one part of the brain's damaged, we see, hey, okay, well, what part of our brain isn't working right? Okay? So, the next part, so here, and then we go on to this. The limbic system is involved with our emotions. And that's just this little part of the brain. There's our sense of smell, just that. You don't smell with your nose, you smell with your brain. You don't see with your eyes, you smell with, you see with your brain. You got thalamus, hypothalamus, cerebrum, hippocampus. They're involved with memory and learning right there. All right, so that's all we wanted to cover now. Go ahead and watch those. Make sure you watch those videos, and the next part we'll be going into synthetic biology.